Alrighty, welcome to the final video in the linear equations and graphs section. This one is going to be about standard form, which is a third way that you can write the equation of a line. The first two that we've already gone over are slope-intercept and point-slope form of lines. So standard form is usually less useful because it doesn't tell you right away what the slope is or what the intercept is or what a point on the line is. But it's really commonly used in textbooks and by mathematicians because it has no fractions and it's a nice kind of clean form. And furthermore, when we get to systems of multiple equations, it's a common form in that subset of mathematics. So when you're just doing one equation by itself, standard form is not so useful. But when you have two or more equations all together in the same problem, then standard form becomes a lot more useful. So some of the properties of an equation in standard form are it has no fractions, which I think some of you guys will be happy about. Both the terms with x and y are on the left-hand side of the equation, so the term with y and the term with x are on the left. The number term, so c is just a number with no x or y, that's always on the right. And the first term in the sequence, which is the x term, it comes first and it's always positive. So I'll show you some examples in a second, but essentially those are the kind of rules that you have to follow for writing an equation in standard form. Okay, so converting from standard form, so if you start in standard form and you want to go to slope-intercept form, it's actually quite easy. So all you have to do is solve for y. So we've done a million equations where you're solving for a certain variable. So to solve for y, you just have to get everything away from the y and get the y by itself. So the first thing you would do, for example, if you have 3x minus 6y equals 18, you could subtract 3x from both sides, and then you would have negative 6y equals negative 3x plus 18, and then you could divide by negative 6, divide everything by negative 6, and you get y equals negative 3x over negative 6 is positive 1/2 x. Positive 18 divided by negative 6 is negative 3. So what is the slope? The slope is positive 1/2. What is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is negative 3. Okay, here's a second example. 8x plus 4y equals negative 2. Subtract 8x from both sides. You could write my line, so let's cancel. 4y equals negative 8x minus 2. Then divide both sides by 4. Again, you have to remember to divide the entire side by 4. Negative 8 over 4 is negative 2 with the x. And then minus 2 over 4 reduces to 1/2, minus 1/2. Okay, so you should be getting pretty good and comfortable with these kind of operations, adding and subtracting something to both sides, and dividing both sides by a number, making sure that you divide everything on this side, not just the first thing. So y equals negative 2x minus 1/2. The slope is negative 2. The intercept is negative 1/2. So converting from standard form is just a matter of solving for y. Okay. What about converting from other forms into standard form? This one is not really harder, but you do have to remember all the different rules or requirements for something to be in standard form. So remember, you can have no fractions. The x and the y both have to be on the left-hand side. The number has to be on the right-hand side. And the x term has to come first and be positive. So each of those rules we have to fulfill becomes one step in our solution. First thing is eliminate all fractions, okay? Well, this has a fraction of 3/4. So that means there's a 4 in the denominator. So if we multiply everything by 4 and distribute it in, then there will be no more fractions. So here we'll have 4y equals 3/4 times 4. The 4's canceled, leaving us with 3x. 6 times 4 is 24. Okay, now we need to have the number on the right, which is already here, 24, and both x and y on the left. So we can subtract 3x from both sides. We want to write the x variable first. So negative 3x plus 4y equals 24. So now we've fulfilled this requirement, no fractions. We've moved x and y to the left, that's done. We've moved the numbers to the right, well they were already there, that's done. So the only thing we have to do is make the x term positive. So right now the x term is negative. So if we multiply everything in the equation by negative 1, it will change the sign of everything. So this will become basically distributed in negative 1. So this will become positive 3x minus 4y equals negative 24. And that's our equation in standard form. Again, why you would want it in this form, When it's a single equation by itself, typically you don't, but starting in a chapter or so, we'll get to multiple equations in the same problem, and that's when it's really useful. Convert this one to standard form, so let me underline here. So there are no fractions, so that's done for us. But to move the x and y terms to the left-hand side, it requires a bit of work because we first need to distribute in here. So let's distribute in the 4, and we can get y minus 3 equals 4x plus 4. Okay, now we can move the 4x to the other side. Minus 4x, minus 4x. Those cancel. Let's do a second step at the same time. Let's add 3 to both sides. So I encourage you guys, as long as you're showing your work, you can do multiple steps at the same time. So we'll have negative 4x plus y. We're adding those together. Equals. Those canceled out. So 4 plus 3 is 7. Alright, again, we've got all the x and y's on the left, we've got the numbers on the right, and we need to make the x term positive. So again, multiply by negative 1. There's a lot of this multiplying by negative 1 going on. Not every time, but frequently. So that becomes positive 4x minus y equals negative 7. So you can see example of converting a slope-intercept form to standard and converting a point-slope form to standard. Sometimes you have to multiply through by whatever number was in the denominator to get rid of a fraction. Sometimes you have to distribute to get rid of parentheses. Whatever you have to do, these are the 4 steps that you have to fulfill. No fractions, x and y on the left, numbers on the right, and the first term is positive and has an x somewhere in it. So that's really all there is to standard form. It's just a different way of writing the equations that fulfills these rules, and you'll see again in the future why it's kind of handy or useful. So that's it.